treat for you tonight. Good. We're going to have our first special joint meeting with the Capitola City Council and the Library Advisory Committee, and I hope we will have more in the future. The library folks have spent a lot of time learning about libraries and thinking about what would work for Capitola, and I really appreciate that you're working on this and helping us, and I think together we'll come up with a wonderful library for the future. It's very exciting. And thank you for being here tonight, and those of you who are here, and we'll take public comments in a little bit, but first, I'll call the meeting to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes, members of the Library Advisory Committee, Stephen Walsh, Tony Campbell, Ariel Gray, and Chair Gail Ortiz,
Here.
And members of the City Council, Councilmember Peterson, Vice Mayor Termini, Councilmember Bertrand,
Here.
Councilmember Bottorff, and Mayor Harlan.
Here, will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additional materials for us tonight?
There are none for this meeting.
Are there any additions and deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes.
The first, we have two items tonight, a review of the library schematic design and a discussion of the library donation and naming parameters, a very general discussion. Most of it, I think, will be focused on the first item. So, Steve, are you going to start, or Jamie's going to start?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the Library Commission, this is an exciting moment for us, I think, for staff and for our architect team and everybody who's been working on this library for so long. At this joint meeting tonight, what we'll be doing is having a presentation from the architects about the schematic design for the library. In addition, then, there can be debate, discussion among the Library Advisory Committee and the Council, and then ultimately we'll be looking for a recommendation from the Library Advisory Commission regarding these schematics designs. And then the Council later this evening on the regular agenda will take up consideration of approving or disapproving the library schematic designs. So with that, I'm prepared to turn it over to Chris Knoll with Knoll & Tam, who I think is going to lead us through a presentation of the process and the library that they have designed for us.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie, and good evening, members of the Council and the Library Advisory Commission. It's very nice to be here. We are now at the end of the schematic design phase, so this is where we have sort of been working very closely with many of you and with sort of getting feedback from the community and coming up with a design that we feel is appropriate. Am I got this close enough to me? Anyway, what I'd like to do is sort of go through a little slideshow here that will help sort of explain some of the design and where we are. And I just want to say that I'm joined by Mati Tabla, our project manager, and Joni Janecki, our landscape architect. And please, it's a study session format, so if you have any questions along the way, I'm very happy to be interrupted.
And I'd also like to introduce the library director, Susan Nemitz, is here tonight.
Yes.
And other dignitaries that I missed that we should introduce? Oh, thank you.
Dave Tenz is a dignitary.
Thank you.
He's our project manager as well.
Yes, thank you.
Well, it's really wonderful to be here. We've had a wonderful process of getting to this point. We've been looking forward to this for quite a long time, even long before we were selected to do the project for you. We've been tracking this project, so we're very happy to be here. We sort of have paid sort of close attention to your town and kind of what the characteristics are, and so at the fact that it's a sort of coastal community with kind of a sort of a flavor of sort of the beach and sort of colorful and fun. Sort of architectural character, but also some really strong things like the railroad trestle. And we've tried to sort of take inspiration from these elements of the city as we developed our design and to sort of find the things that were unique to Capitola that we can incorporate into our design thinking and into the actual design. And so these are things that we took as inspiration. Along the way, we looked at a number of different alternatives about how we might sort of site and design the building. These were sort of 3 designs that we came to at a community meeting to get feedback from. They were preceded by a number of site alternative designs. So we looked at a bunch of different things to kind of get to where we are. We didn't just sort of jump to one conclusion. And the design at the top was the one that we sort of developed further and into the designs that you'll see a little bit later. But I think that, the community really did give us some good feedback, and I think that they had, a number of concerns, things about on the site, do we have enough parking? We've got 40 parking spaces, which is kind of as much as we feel we can get onto the site, and we think that it is adequate for a building of this size, not generous, but adequate, and I think it will do well. We wanted a pedestrian connection across Rispin and across the Wharf Road to Rispin and to the creek, and we've managed to sort of make that into something that will work. People were enthusiastic about sort of a porch design and being able to have this indoor-outdoor kind of sense of the library. And then there were some concerns about light pollution that came up at the last community meeting, and we're going to be very careful so that the library doesn't, even though we want it to be sort of a glowing beacon at night, it doesn't overwhelm the neighbors, and we want to be careful about that. On the interior, providing flexible spaces was really important, and that's always important in a library. And then sort of the acoustics was another big issue that we're going to pay close attention to, as well as kind of keeping direct sunlight out so it doesn't get too hot. And then on the exterior, people felt very positive about our designs, but we wanted to sort of find something that was really unique to Capitola. So, if you look at our portfolio, no 2 buildings in our design work that we've done ever really look the same, and that's because we always really do pay attention to making these things fit each of their communities, and we hope we have something that feels right here in Capitola, and would be interested in any of your feedback on that if you agree or not. And then also sort of things like durable materials and sustainability are also always present in our design process. This is our site plan, and Joni is here to help explain, but I think what I might do is use my mouse here to sort of identify what is happening on the site. This is Wharf Road and Clares Avenue here, so we're at the corner. Right, the existing library is right about here. We are moving the entrance to the parking lot a little bit further up Wharf Road so that we can fit it in, and this is where we have our 40 spaces. We have our accessible spaces right here near the front door, and the front door of the library is right here. The staff entrance to the library is right over here, and then the playground is back in this corner here, and we're really doing very little in that playground area because we want to sort of preserve it as it is and not spend any of our limited budget on that. But some of the characteristics of the site plan are that, we sort of have a nice entrance plaza outside the front entrance, the community room at this point, so you can sort of come by and you can see into the community room. We have a porch right here, a deck, and you'll see that illustrated in some of the renderings that we have. Between the deck and the playground is kind of a rocky area here for our bioswale, but also to sort of bring that creek motif in, which starts kind of over here at the front entrance and has some connections over here. There's another small deck over here for adult reading area because we expect that this area is going to be a fairly noisy and active place to be, and so we wanted to preserve, a quiet place for adults to read. That was one of the community comments that we had. Along Wharf Road, we have kind of a water retention and processing area here, so we have to treat and process all the water that comes off of the roof and the parking on the site, and this will be an area that is going to have boulders and concrete walls and look very naturalistic that will come all the way around the corner here. And then there will be an entrance. There's an existing entrance to the playground through a fence right here. So we're going to keep this fence, keep that entrance to the playground, but also have an accessible route that goes around that, bring the fence up this way, so there'll be an accessible route into the site, so you'll be able to come in without going right through the playground to get to the front door. Or coming up from the corner here, you'll be able to get to it that way. So those are the highlights of the site plan, I think. We got let's see, we got a transformer over here, some trash compactor over here, or trash bin over here, and we're hoping to have a book drop-off bin, so you can stay in your car and drop it right off. And we're going to try to fit that in right about here. these are some of the elements that Joni and her team have put together. Decks and paving and sort of whimsical and sort of fun decorative paving will be something that will feature in, and even working the deck in around the existing trees. And so our deck is raised off the ground so we can actually kind of move and have a usable area sort of under the trees without damaging the root systems of the oak trees that exist right there. And then these are some illustrations showing the kind of landscape materials that will be incorporated in here: boulders, grasses, drought-tolerant plantings, and the sort of the idea of the creek, the Soquel Creek theme coming through. This is the floor plan of the building, and we'll get into this in more detail, but basically the front entrance is right here. The community room is in this location. The children's area is over here. You come in the front door, and this is the sort of a large reading room that has a lot of natural light. The teen room is here, a sort of a multi-purpose room that could be, anything from a homework center to a makerspace to a meeting room. Several other meeting rooms over here. The quiet area of the library would be at this end with that deck, and then the staff areas are back in this area with the restrooms at this location. We have 4 single occupancy restrooms, and then another meeting room for about 4 to 6 people. But I will sort of get into a little bit more detail when we get to the interiors. But on the outside of the building, we've got a palette of materials, and we have them in a box right here, and I'd be happy to pass them around with you later. But this shows looking at the front entrance from the parking lot, and you can sort of, this is the front entrance right here. We have a wood material that is kind of on the underside of the eaves, which also then comes onto the inside of the building, creating kind of this sloping ceiling down in the center. On the outside of the building, you see primarily here on the meeting room and the children's wing, which is a lower wing, so we have sort of a higher and a lower part of the building. This would be a cement panel material of a lighter texture and sort of a large sort of staggered pattern. And then over here you can see just a little edge of it, and you'll see more in the next illustration, of the same material but a darker color. That would be more of a plank version of it. These are all rain screen application, which is a sort of a technological improvement over how we used to put buildings together that is very energy efficient and very sort of good for waterproofing and keeping the building dry and safe. And then we'll have some darker panels here that might be a zinc metal material, as would be sort of the coping up here on the building. And you can see beyond here the deck outside the children's with a canopy over it. Moving a little bit further to the right, you get a better view looking into the community meeting room. So it'll be a place that if people are meeting in there, it's going to be very visible and open. And then you can sort of see beyond it at the deck. So the deck will open up very directly into the children's room and become a kind of a nice place that you can spill out of the children's room onto the deck and then into the garden out here. And then in between that area and the parking area will be a planted area with boulders and plantings that'll sort of give some buffer between the parking, because you don't want to just look at the cars when you're out there in the park. And then you can sort of move around a little further, looking from Clares Avenue. You can see the sort of the children's wing here, again with another large window looking out toward Clares, and the canopy and the windows opening to the children's onto the main deck. And then you can start getting a good view of the large reading room and that kind of roof form that kind of comes over this. And the reason we've staggered the two, that we have the tall form, which is the main reading room, and the lower form, which is the community meeting room and the children's area, and that allows us to have glass in the spaces in between, so we're always getting natural light coming in from all directions here. Our expectation is that there'll be so much light in this building that you won't have to turn the lights on most days, and that will save us energy in the long run. And you can sort of see how the planting areas are very naturalistic, and they come around here and lead you into the park. And that sort of quiet reading deck would be kind of up at this position. And then moving even further onto the corner of Clares, looking back, this is kind of that big prominent corner of the building. This is where you can see the big overhang that sort of helps us with sun, keeping the sun out, as well as kind of giving us this nice form that goes directly from the outside down to the inside in this kind of inverted hip roof. And again, it shows how transparent the building is. We want people to be able to see in and see out and really sort of enjoy from the inside of the building the natural landscape on the outside, having a sense of the day, and the weather, and people can see people at work in there. And then you can see here the panels, the solid panels are that cementitious board material that'll be very durable, and then the base of the building would be a board formed concrete that kind of is formed up in a pattern that is attractive and kind of goes along with the other materials on the building. And then at nighttime, it'll be kind of a glowing object in the landscape, and something that will, be sort of recognizable as, a real sort of landmark in Capitola, we hope, and people will sort of, really like it. And it sort of has that right feeling of something that glows and is very inviting and letting you see inside. And these are some close-ups of the materials, and these are the sort of that cement panel materials. It's a very high-quality material that sort of stands the test of time really well. There might be some weathered wood and some natural wood-looking materials, as well as possibly some metal. The metal that we would use would be not a finished metal, but it would be like a zinc that naturally weathers. All of our materials on the outside of the building will naturally weather. They won't need a lot of maintenance. They won't need repainting. They won't rust unless we use something like a Corten steel, which we want to rust to look right. And then some other things like there might be some concrete forms and possibly some other natural wood elements, both in the landscape features. And then on the inside, these are sort of the program revisions that we've made as we worked through the program with Susan. And again, I probably can go through this. And the community meeting room is right here, and it has a large storage area, so that's where you can keep the tables and chairs stored away, so that they can go in and out depending upon, how the room is set up. The presentation wall is going to be over here at this side, so it has a door, it has a little kitchenette in there. The children's area is laid out here. It has these sort of large windows looking out onto the deck, as well as another set of windows over here, and also has kind of light coming in kind of along this line right here, where it sort of is coming in, and bouncing back and forth between these two spaces. This is the sort of the entrance lobby, and then we'll have self-check machines here, but also sort of book displays, and we'll develop that as we get into the next phase. We have the bookshelves and seating of various sorts in the main reading room here, computers in the center, the service desk right here. It's located here because it has really good visibility, both through to the children's. They can see the front door. They can see all parts here. So it's sort of well located back in that location in the space. Over here is kind of a quiet sort of informal seating area. We're hoping to get a fireplace in here, like a gas fireplace, something that will kind of be warm and toasty. And then there's another quiet reading area down here. This part and this part we expect to be, sort of more calm and quiet. Whereas the children's area is going to be very boisterous and vigorous. But we have a glass wall here that can be opened up if we want to have, sort of people moving back and forth between them. But if we need to close it down because of the noise, we can close that off. And then, as I said, this is the teen area that has both collections and seating that's going to be specially designed for teens. And then this is that flexible space that can be used for meetings, for presentations, for homework center, for makerspace. Two of the small study rooms next to that, and then there's a larger study room over here. So that's one of the things that's really missing from the library now, is a place for group study. And then, as I said, the restrooms are here, 2 accessible restrooms and 2 sort of non-accessible, for a total of 4, plus a staff restroom back here. And then this is the rest of the staff area with the break room, the office, the staff work area, and some mechanical electrical spaces here. And then kind of another, this is where the book return would be located right there. Some views from the inside. This is sort of standing at that next to where the fireplace might be, looking back toward the front door. You can see the opening to the community meeting room. You can see sort of on this wall here that leads, directly from the front door into the children's area, and that's kind of something we like to do, is to get the children moving as quickly into the area, not traipsing through the rest of the library. And we've made this kind of a fun little passageway with some decorations on the wall, decorative motif that we still have to figure out what, exactly what that is, but we're drawing a bunch of circles now that look kind of like bubbles or something like that. But it would lead the children down into that area. You can see also kind of what I was talking about earlier when I said we have the high portion and the lower portion of the building. That allows us to have all this glass coming in between those two areas. So not only does it come in from there, but it also then bounces back into another little interstitial area between the top of the teen room and the corridor and the children's area behind. So there's going to be a lot of natural light bouncing around. Turning the other direction, looking back, front door, some bookshelves, the door to the restrooms, and then the door to the staff area right here that also gives you a view into that meeting room, which is these two little windows here allow you to see that sort of larger meeting room, and then the fireplace and the seating area right outside. Again, very tall windows looking out toward the creek in that direction, Wharf Road, and you can sort of get a sense of the wooden ceiling up there, and it's an acoustical wooden ceiling, so it will we're paying a lot of attention to the acoustics. It's one big space, but I think both the ceiling will be absorbent, the floor will have carpet tile on it, and that will be absorbent, and then a good part of this wall will probably be an acoustical wood material, but it just looks kind of, it hasn't really been rendered in this view, but we're projecting this is to be wood and this is to be wood, so there'll be a lot of wood finishes in the library. Turning sort of directly around, you can see now into the teen area here to the left, all the way down to the end of the reading room, and you can sort of see how the ceiling pitches down. It's kind of got this sort of keel. It's kind of like the keel of a boat as we conceived it. The large windows looking out toward Rispin and the creek, and sort of you get a sense once you come into the building, you can sort of see everything there is to see just as you come in, which makes it easy to navigate. A closer up view of the fireplace and seating area around it. We haven't selected the furniture yet, but we're playing around with some ideas. And then sort of at the service desk, looking back toward the front door, you can see the teen room is going to be behind a glass wall, but it will be a very transparent glass wall, and so the staff will be able to kind of keep a good close eye on things as they go there, and even looking through that to see the front door as people come in. And then looking the other direction, again, there's this sort of the small reading area in between the teen and sort of the study room here, looking into the children's area. And there will be some large doors here that will be able to be opened up so that you can sort of go back and forth that until it gets so noisy we want to keep it closed. And so again, all sort of transparent walls in here so that there's always good visibility, and really one person at the service desk could keep a good eye on pretty much 90% of the library from that location. And then sort of looking back into the teen area, this is something we'll kind of develop as we go in terms of, how things are laid out in there to make it kind of fun and appropriate for the teens. Looking down the corridor toward the children's area, it sort of shows that wall that kind of has some decorative things on it, but also looking at sort of maybe a series of skylights that go down in there, again, bringing more and more natural light as much as we can to all parts of the building. And then sort of as you get into the children's area, you can see sort of a whole wall of glass looking out onto the deck and the playground and the park area beyond, kind of with a central area for sort of activities, and then books on either side, and then just to the right would be the community meeting room, and then that large window at the end. And then there'll be light coming in from these skylights up here, but also right above this area here will be another sort of set of windows that allow more light in. So it's light, light, light. And then sort of looking out on that, and sort of we threw a little ship's wheel in there just to give you again the sense that we're on a ship, and this is fun and this is exciting voyage for the children. So this is where we are in the process. We've just come to the end of schematic design. We have another design phase ahead of us, a design development phase where all of the ideas that you've seen here will be developed further and sort of refined. But I think all the basic concepts are here, unless we think otherwise. And then once we get through that phase, we'll move into the construction documents phase, which is where we really sort of get this thing ready for putting out to bid with the contractor and then off to construction. So that is where we are, and be very happy to take any
Wonderful,
questions.
wonderful. It's very exciting, very, very exciting. Are there questions? Shall we take questions from the audience now? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come up and tell us what you think of these pictures?
I think the audience is full of people with answers.
That's wonderful. Great, great. Would Would the individual members of the library committee like to make comments now about what you've seen and what you like and so forth?
Can I make a comment?
Certainly.
So the Library Advisory Committee, this is the first time they're actually seeing it as a body, and so we're hoping to get a recommendation from that body today to the council for its meeting later tonight. So we could, confer, and I would entertain a motion in a second, but we can talk about.
Why don't you lead this
Things
part of
first.
it? So you want to have some discussion among. Good evening, Susan. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm Susan Nimitz. I'm the director of the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. I just wanted to say that we worked really closely with both city staff, Nolan Tam, David, several library staff, and the community committee, and I think we're very excited about the direction this is going. I think it's beautiful. I think it's functional, and I think it's unlike anything I've seen. And so I'm really excited about that because I think it really is going to be a unique and special place for the citizens of Capitola.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Susan right now? Jack.
I have a couple of questions, and maybe the architect could be involved in this, but being a librarian, Susan, so there's reading desks or study desks in front of the main desk for the staff. Do you see that as going to be a highly used area if it's right there, positioned between the site, within the sight line to the children's areas?
And you're talking about this larger meeting room?
No, if you're looking at the staff main desk,
Yep.
that one, and then you have three study areas or three desks that are for studying. Do you think that would get a lot of use? It's sort of positioned right in the middle of everything.
Those are the computers. And one of the, and again, this is a drawing of the program. I think the next step is to really pick furniture and go through sort of functionality, test some of our original assumptions. One of the things that I like to do with public computing is have it within the sight of the staff, because a lot of people that use public computing need help. It also creates certain behavioral expectations that we want to establish in the library.
Got it.
So we like to keep the computing pretty close to the staff.
Okay. If I may, I have another question. I have three questions, actually. So I'm looking at the staff entrance,
Yes.
and I'm looking at the book drop location. And I'm wondering if in the area of the book drop location, that could be also the entrance. In that area where the entrance is right now, it seems to be unused space. Maybe I'm incorrect, but that's a lot of space for an entrance, and why not use that for something else?
We do a lot of deliveries between libraries, so a resident of Santa Cruz County can really request a book from any of the other branches.
Right.
And so one of the things we want to do is really have functional delivery. We thought about putting delivery in the same spot as where the book drop is, but really it requires that the delivery vehicle then take up these parking spaces. And we didn't want to lose any public parking spots, especially the most desirable ones, to a delivery which may come once or twice a day. And so by putting it here, the assumption is the delivery truck will park along that entryway and run in with their dollies and cart or their bins full of books. And so that was sort of why we had divided it, because we didn't want to put the book drop on this side of the building either, because it needs to be in a walkway into the building. So that's why we separated the two functions.
Okay. So how often do book drops, deliveries occur, and would that really interfere with people coming to the library?
Well, the one thing you'd have to do is reserve the spots. And with the traffic here, the deliveries aren't on time. And so what you'd have to do is reserve these two spots in perpetuity for the delivery truck to go to that point. And we just didn't want to do that.
Okay.
Actually, had another strategy, which might be to make these into 3 or 5 minute parking for the people to drop books off. And that would be another technique that would sort of keep those spaces free. So if the book if the book vehicle came, they could use that, I think.
And my only hope was to get most of the drive-through traffic through an external book bin. That tends to work really well, especially with families where you don't want to get out of the car.
Okay, so I'm just putting that out there because you expressed in response to a question I had earlier.
Then would you combine these?
Combine these entrances?
Yeah, I think that's what you're asking is to.
Right, so that you can have more use in the staff area.
What we were worried about was the staff entrance being confused for the main entrance, and we thought about pushing that around the corner and make it a little more out of the way. So
Okay, just something to think about. So just
We'll go back and talk about it.
okay. I have another idea. I don't know if it's a good suggestion, but the reading area at the joining of Wharf Road and Claire's, there's 4 little seats there. Yes, exactly. Can that be raised to sort of set it aside, sort of make it a special spot for being away from everything and sort of give it a little privacy maybe?
If you look at it from the corner,
Wouldn't.
is, and
Oh, it is.
this becomes an advertisement for what's going on in the library. We also tried to zone quiet and noisy spaces. So if you look that, you'll come in here, kids are kind of pushed this direction. Still, this will be a busy area. Teens are here, and then we try to get more and more quiet. So my hope is that that will actually be the most quiet space in the building. I don't know if we'll actually have comfortable seating or if we'll do study tables there. I think those are the kinds of things we need to work through. But I would like to reserve that corner for the quiet
Right.
space. But I think if you look at how much it's lofted up off the street,
it's almost 8 feet or more above the
So
street.
you don't want too high. Okay.
So they'll be sort of perched up there overlooking.
and they'll have a beautiful view of the Rispin.
Can you keep holding that for a while?
Here we go.
Yes, exactly. I just want to see how long this meeting could go. Okay. No, I'm not. You have strong ideas, strong convictions about what you believe in, which is very, very commendable. I have another question. No, not on that one, actually. So I was just having fun. So in the children's library where the deck is, it's going to be connected to the main area. There's a little constriction. Yeah, so see where the deck is? Yes. No, not that deck, the quiet reading. Yeah, okay. And keep pointing the deck. Yeah, exactly. And you'll see a little, yes, that little constriction there. Is that a walkthrough or?
There's a doorway here.
Yeah, and then to the left of the door. Yes, right there.
Just a little window between
It's
the
okay.
children's area.
I was just wondering. Okay, it's a window. It's not a pass-through. So in terms of the children, I was wondering. Okay.
It's just to give that sense of light and space and view through there so it doesn't kind of close off.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
Can I ask a quick question? So the little interior seating area that connects the main room to the children's area, and you've got a table and 4 chairs, something in there. Are you anticipating the bulk of the children coming and going from the library to be going out of that little dog leg front area, or do you see a lot of children passing through that middle area?
I mean, my intention, Susan can add to this, is that the children are mainly going to be going through this area here, that
Yeah,
passageway
right.
between the entrance. That is a secondary means of access, probably more for staff than for children.
And my hope is to make it a glass wall that you can open and close. But again, I think to preserve quiet, I would usually keep the glass wall closed.
Right. I just figured if I were sitting there at that table and kids were running and back and forth in back of me the whole time, it wouldn't be very peaceful. So
Maybe that's where the parents sit.
that's where the parents sit. Right. Okay, thank you.
We haven't finished sort of all the furniture design and layout, as Susan said, and so all these things are things that we're going to have to get through in the next phase.
Ed?
Yeah, I know initially we had talked about there's a landscape section just to the right of where that deck is. We were going to try to provide 4 additional parking places, some kind of short-term parking. And I want to know how that would work with a book drop. Is there a plan for a book drop on that side? Or how would if they wanted to drop off a book, how would they get, what's the shortest path?
So it's more of a curved inlet being shown
Right.
shown right now. I don't want to do two external book drops, and I know where it might be easy here. You've got to think of where the driver is, because the driver often would be alone or the only person capable of doing the book drop piece. So I think this should be reserved for short-term parking, and I still believe that the book drop should be in the parking lot.
So they would just have to walk, is there a path through there someplace, or, okay, so there's still a way to get there. If they want to drop, if they were there for 20 minutes, they could walk and drop it off if they just felt that was more convenient.
More for pick, remember,
To pick up children, to pick up the elderly.
pick up your books.
Right. Yeah. I just want to make sure there's a way to get some kind of a path or pavement or walkway. Okay,
It's an accessible path, that comes up right through here,
perfect.
right to the front door. And so they can park here and easily drop their books off there. And then, if they really don't want to get out of the car, then all they have to do is
Yeah, we're not making it a drive-through. That wasn't the idea. I mean, they can get out of their car and walk. That's okay.
What other comments or questions do the library folks have? I saw this at the meeting. Tony?
I do. I have some comments. Ed and I were talking briefly before this meeting was convened about what a rare event a new civic building is, and we're debating which was the last new civic building that the council built, and we think we're sitting in it.
Gymnasium.
Oh,
Gymnasium,
gymnasium. Sorry. So
Used to own.
So as I look at this opportunity, I think we are in an extraordinarily sweet spot. We have a new and talented director of libraries who has extraordinary experience or background in building libraries at her former site. Then we just lucked out with Noel and Tam and their landscape architect that they do extraordinary things. If you look at their portfolio, which you can see most of them online, what Chris said is absolutely accurate. They don't have a look. I mean, they have a modern look, some of them, but not all of them. And it's like, okay, that's another piece of the sweet spot. And then you think about this conversation just now, like you, Jock, asking about, the little nook in here, and Gail about this walkthrough place, and you listen to what these two have to say, and their decisions, or their recommendations, I guess I should put it that way, because you guys make the decision, they're reasoned. Every single one of them. There was a reason why they decided to do X and not Y. And I just, I look at this and I go, I was really active with Measure S, and I think, oh, good investment in time. We got that. And now this community is going to get a library that, your grandkids are going to look at and say, Grandpa did that. And that's going to feel good to everybody because of the quality of the technical folks who are involved in this. And speaking personally, I'm thrilled to pieces to continue on with working on this.
Thank you very, very much. Other comments from library folks?
I think that the work that's been done to address every segment of this community has been terrific. We're talking about the young people, the teenagers, the older people who like to sit in the quiet spot in the library. This plan and this whole exercise has considered all of that input from the community, and it's been a terrific experience to watch happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I really I love how there's a space for everyone. I love how the children's space is dedicated, but it's still part of the library. The way that there's the connection with the outside, both with the decks and maintaining the play area, but also with the views to Rispin. Just the recognition of how important the outside and light are to this community. I think it's a really beautiful design that maintains the intimacy that we're looking for, but that creates the right space for everyone to enjoy in the library. I do have a question about that outside, the decks. They are going to be open, correct? So how will that work with people not walking away with library materials?
I prefer not to talk about security in a public body, but theft is a part of our business. One of the things that I would say is print materials value has gone down significantly in the last 10 years. Libraries will always hold items that are of value in a commercial marketplace, even used, and theft is a part of our business that we deal with.
Will there be kiosks, checkout kiosks, maybe by those open areas? How easily you leave, or?
And I hadn't mentioned this to you. I had written some notes to myself. I've been on vacation. So I do want to put a kids self-checkout in the kids area. I think that will be great. And then we'll have self-check. But there will be a fluidity to this building that is a little unusual in libraries.
I don't see any danger in having that open deck there, because if someone is of a mind to walk out of the library with a book, they could probably walk out of the front door with the same book.
That's what we figured too. I mean, there's very much of an honor system about this. I mean, we're not charging for the books, and so they can have them.
I do have some other ideas about security, and I'd love to talk to you about that. But I prefer not to say it, honestly, totally in an open forum, because that then tells people how to steal from us.
The adult deck will have a little fence around it with a gate, so there isn't kind of a direct access out of there without going through kind of some panic hardware and, opening that gate. So there's some inhibition.
Do you want to sum up for everybody? We're going to finish up with the library folks and with all of their comments and discussion and questions, and then we'll come back to the council.
Yeah. All right, great. So I'll entertain a motion in a second from the Library Advisory Committee on this.
Unless there's any other discussion, any other questions and things you'd like to know about or you'd like to add, or we can always add things later, right?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn for 5 minutes. Is that what you're talking?
No, I'm just saying make a motion that we approve the plans and we pass them on to the
I make a
council
motion
with
that
our
we-
approval.
I make a motion that we approve the plan as submitted.
So a second with Tony Campbell. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, library experts. We really appreciate all your help with this as we move forward. And as Susan said, it may be a work in progress. We may find that we want a little more of something or a little less of something, and we'll certainly call you to meet again to give us your expertise opinions about this. Very exciting. Any other closing comments for you, Gail?
No, I think if we move on to the second item agenda,
Right.
yeah, that's
Right.
something good to do.
Okay. So we'll move on to the item B. Do you want to start with that?
Sure, Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the Library Advisory Committee. So this is really, we wanted to take this time when we had everyone in the room together to really sort of start the conversation about donations and naming policies. This is going to be an ongoing conversation that we're going to have. This is just sort of the initial first step. And as background, recently, the overall library JPA recently adopted a broad policy about naming rights within the whole library system. And what that sets in place is kind of the overall criteria, and then it gives us the ability underneath that to adopt our own specific naming policy that's tailored for our community. At this point in time, why we're here really is that strategic direction, I think, from the council and library committee is going to be helpful to the folks that are doing the fundraising, who are also at the table here tonight, but to help them understand sort of what opportunities the city may be interested in having, and what types of donations we may be interested in receiving. We're not going to be talking about donation amounts at this stage. This is really kind of more strategic, and we're not making a final decision. At the end of the day, we'll ultimately, at the end of the line, we'll have a policy that the city can adopt about donation and naming policies for this library, but we're well away from that right now. So libraries recognize donations in all sorts of different ways. Really common ways through sort of donor walls, very traditional, and some really kind of unique and different ideas that communities have adopted, whether they're glass, whether they're sort of bookshelves that get filled over time, birds, tree leaves, the sort of flowing streams, again, the etched glass. Those are really kind of traditional donor walls, donor recognition type things. More recently, it's become common to have people dedicate parts of a library or even a library building and basically get their name. For example, in this case, there was a donation made for Karen's Corner, and it was in honor of Karen, who made a donation to this library to get the children's area named after her. So what we've done is the Capitola Friends, who recently formed, we've been working together and taking a look and together at what sort of opportunities we would have in our library potentially to name. And at this point, it's really useful, I think, to have the city and the Friends and everybody just in close alignment about what kind of opportunities might be on the table as we get into the phase where maybe we begin to start talking to donors. So what we have done is taken a look at sort of the different types of naming opportunities that might be available in our library, and then I've broken them for simplicity's sake into different kinds of categories. And basically at the top would be the building name. And the building name is not the branch name. The branch name is the Capitola Branch Library. But potentially it could be housed in a building named after an individual or corporation. Then, kind of below that are all the different types of rooms that we'll have within the library. The study rooms, the teen rooms, the children's rooms, the adult reading areas. Those kinds of rooms can be named after an individual or a corporation. And then we get to some sort of more unique ideas, fireplace kind of spaces, outdoor play areas, maybe an electronic media center, those kinds of things. And then all the way down to some libraries have found that the furniture itself can have, specific plaques and dedications associated with it. And then lastly, sort of is the most traditional, which is donor wall kind of recognition. And so I think what we're looking for, what staff and the Friends are looking for, and Gail, please chime in here as I wrap up, is really either these different types of naming opportunities, are we open to them potentially? It doesn't mean we're committing to them at this stage. And if we are, would we be interested in an individual only or an individual or a corporation for that naming opportunity? So for example, I'll use a company that doesn't exist in Capitola anymore. Would we be willing to have the Safeway Teen Center if Safeway still existed and made a big donation to us? Or would it only be acceptable for it to be named after an individual? So that's the kind of feedback we're looking for. And Gail, if you have anything from the Friends perspective that I missed here?
Well, we've been doing a lot of research on what other municipalities do. We're going to be visiting Los Gatos in a couple of weeks, talking to their friends about the $2.1 million that they raised. And we've heard, this body, the council, in its January meeting, adopted a funding mechanism for the remaining $2.5 million shortfall, of which $350,000 we committed to raising. So when you think about naming the building first and then all of the rooms, what we've learned since then is that we would be talking about a lot more money. Buildings in this area and other areas are generally 25 to 50% of the building cost. So we're talking about somewhere between 3.7 million and 7.5. So I don't think we're going to be raising that kind of money here in this community. So that's one thing you need to think about when you think about naming the building. And if you do decide you want to name the building, we might think about putting those kinds of funds. If we find someone to do that, we put those funds in an endowment that is for this particular library branch, that's for the programming, the books, some specific thing that resonates with the donor. That also works for us and works for the library. So, but I think that somewhere around our goal that we've committed to, somewhere around the $350,000, is something that we all feel comfortable raising. And we're thinking that if we were just left to raising that for the rooms and the different things inside the library, that's still doable. So I think what we're asking you tonight is, it comes down to, how do you feel about the building? How do you think this community feels about naming that building? And if you say that there's a possibility we want to name the building, then would we name it after an individual, or would you go as far as to name it after a corporation? The fundraising committee, as it stands today, had a vote last week on it, and it was a very close vote. It was a 3 to 4, and it was 4 people in favor of not naming the building and 3 in favor of naming it, possibly naming it, and leaving that option open. And with the option of it being an endowment, that's good. That works for us, because we'd still be able to go out and know what monies we have to raise to meet the shortfall. So, so you have to, so what we're asking you to talk about tonight is building name, individual or corporate or both, and then also talk about the rooms and all of that. Same thing. We're hoping that you at least let us have the rooms, because that's how we're going to be raising the money. People are going to be giving money to have their names on different rooms. But how far down do we want to go? Do we want every single thing plastered with a name in our library? I don't think any of us want that. So we sort of looked at, we had 16 naming rights. And it didn't go so far as the fireplace, but it went as far as the fireplace area. And so we have to work with the architects on the things like bricks, or, and you folks, I'm sure, have really good ideas about what we can do that sets us apart from every other project like that, where we'll get people who want to donate $100, $500, up to the whatever $2,000 level. So you have to have people at all kinds of different levels. But we would be starting much higher for those other areas, but we don't want to talk about those amounts tonight, because we need to hire a consultant for this, and that's the person we need to rely on to work with to come up with those numbers. So we're asking you for a philosophical building and building naming or not, and smaller the rooms or not.
Yeah, I think it was pretty unanimous that if the opportunity for a building naming took place, 2 things. It shouldn't be corporate in any way. And, if you look at the first page on the Santa Cruz Public Library naming policy, page 29 on the agenda, it talks about the person, the honoree, reflects the spirit and values of the library and the community, extraordinary service to the library system, an individual or family name that is well known and of philanthropic nature in the city and has some recognition in the city. The Wayne Fonts building,
Yes.
just to throw a name up. So those are the kind of things that, and we don't think that we're going to see someone step up and want to name the building, but if that were the case, it certainly should be restricted to that and not the Target building. Not that there's anything wrong with Target.
So also think about a family foundation,
Right.
and that's another option. That's another middle ground.
Certainly.
So what are everybody else's thoughts about this? I have some concerns about naming the building, because I can't think of anybody except Wayne Fonts. I like that. But I would have some concerns about it, just because it is. I don't mind anything inside the building being named. I think that's wonderful.
It would have to come back to us, though.
I know, but I really can't even think of anyone that is. I mean, everyone's special in Capitola, and I just sort of hate to elevate someone to that level and have other people be kind of jealous and to say, well, that they just paid for it,
Exactly.
And that's what they do. That's what they do.
Precisely.
I know. So, in a small town like this, I'm just a little hesitant to actually name a big thing like that after one person that, years later, people might say, really? Why that? But I'm open to it if you have some other ideas. John?
Gail just talked about the idea of a foundation, and I like the idea of a foundation in that if it's providing money for ongoing activities, let's think about the children's area. So if this foundation over a period of time, and it's a contract, it's a contractual thing, provides money for ongoing children's activities, readings, program development, hiring special people to do special programs, stuff like that. So it's a real addition to what makes this library special. So I kind of like that idea.
That'd be wonderful. We're talking about the building, though.
Well,
Do we want the building to have a name?
I'm sorry, but, okay. Basically, I agree with Michael on this. You know, it has to be something that's pertinent to this area, okay? And I don't know who it would be, foundation-wise, company-wise.
Chime in. Yes, please.
I have sort of negative feelings about naming the building after anybody or anything. I think it's the Capitola Library, and it should be the Capitola Library. You know, if you look at, over the years, I've had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of research in a lot of different libraries. The Widener Library at Harvard, the Powell Library at UCLA, the Sterling Library at Yale, the King, or the MLK, depending upon what you call it in San Jose. The library in San Jose, or excuse me, at Santa Clara University is called the Harrington Learning Commons Sobrato Technology Center and Aurora Library.
Really?
Stanford beat that by calling their place SULAR, or the Stanford University Libraries and Academic Information Resources. But they broke it down into 3 libraries which have a fair amount of tradition at Stanford. The Green Library, which now has a wing called the Bing. You have the Lathrop Library, which was, of course, after Mrs. Stanford, and the Hoover, which we all know where that one came from. And finally, if you look at Berkeley, there's the Bancroft, which is after Hubert Howe Bancroft, who donated all of his books, manuscripts, documents, and photos to the library and got it started. And there was another library, there is another library there called the Doe Library, which is named after Charles Franklin Doe, who donated 24% of his estate to the university to build the library. There's the Starr Asian Library, which is named after Cornelius Vander Starr, who was the founder of AIG, the insurance company. And then there's the Huntington Library in Southern California, which is named after the famous Henry Huntington, who had a lot of railroads and property and estate and that sort of thing. At Santa Clara University, John Sobrato donated $40 million as a first portion of his contribution to that function. He also donated another $100 million for a STEM facility over there. So if a library gets named after somebody, there's got to be a big, big number. And I think that Gail really hit on something in saying we would find it somewhat difficult to go out and find that big, big number. And if it's 50% of the library, you know, $5 million or $8 million, whatever it is, 250,000 or 400,000 or whatever, that's not good. The other thing that happens is sometimes when a library gets named after somebody, it gets contracted, and they call it by some acronym, or they call it a vault, or they call it a depository, or a biblioteca, or some other thing. I think it should be called the Capitola Library, and I think that says it all. It says where it is, it says what it does, and it also says who paid for it. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Who else would like to follow that? Ed.
Stephen, those are great comments. Okay, I appreciate those comments, and I think the thing we need to take away from this is I don't sense that anybody up here wants to give away the name of that library unless it's a reasonable contribution. But I don't want to give up on the fact that someone might make that contribution. I mean, you don't know unless you ask, and I think the Friends are going to take on this challenge to try to fundraise. And I think that the message that we need to send is, you know, and I don't want to even attach a number to it at this point, but I want to say that, you know, this library is very important. As we mentioned, Tony, this is a big deal to us. It will say the Capitola Library on it. It may not be on the top line, but it will be on the building. And if somebody's name is attached to it that we all, you know, felt comfortable, for lack of a better word, you know, felt comfortable with that name being there, and they reached that limit, because I still want to weigh a little bit on the point that, you know, this library is going a little bit over budget that we don't have to pay for. So if there was a considerable donation for the name of the library, I would not be opposed to that. And then with regard to the rooms, totally fine with the rooms being named. I think, obviously there needs to be some kind of great structure for what we think a room is worth. I have no problem with Karen's Corner or something like that being on the wall. I don't think that makes the library any less, important of a place. I don't want to see a tag. We have tags on all of our benches in town. I really don't want to see, there's the Restaurant of Paradise has a tag at every chair in the bar, and I don't think we need that. Okay, so I would almost stop it.
For a different reason. The tax
It's for a different reason, but you know what? I mean, I think we're willing to, lack of better terms, deal with the devil a little bit with collecting money. But I'm not opposed to having signs on everything in that library. It is way too classy of a building as you're designing to do that. But to have some rooms that bring in some flair. I mean, you're going to put bubbles on the wall. I'm okay with somebody's name there, and maybe with the exception, the rooms, the building, and maybe the fireplace area. I think beyond that, I don't see any purpose.
Can I bring a couple of points up that you mentioned? And as a fundraiser, I'm not exactly sure how I go about telling somebody who's just offered me $5 million, I'll get back to you and let you know if you're acceptable. So you have to, I think, be very careful about what you put out to begin with, about what you're going to do, and be very certain that you feel comfortable saying no to the person that might not be the money that you had hoped for. Not the amount, but the person behind the money you had hoped for. And as a fundraiser, I don't think you can really do that. You have to either say you're going to do it, and you're going to take whoever puts that money up, unless they have a very, and the library has already said, they have a bad reputation in town. They've got some big thing attached to their name that's not good. How do you really go about doing that?
Well, you do that because we have to then go to the library JPA, and they have to approve it. So
you're going to pass the buck to them?
No, we're not, because I don't think anyone up here, none of the five of us, have a problem with saying, thank you very much, but the Herman Goebbels library is not going to happen. It's simple, and it doesn't have to be that extreme in a case.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is, we have to approve whatever happens, whatever foundation comes forward. And I seriously don't see, number one, I have a hard time seeing it happening. And if it does, I have a hard time seeing it happening from someone, genuinely detestable. I just don't think that kind of a statement comes forward. When I look at the Robleys and I look at the Solaris and the people who really have helped build this community, these are the kind of people we're going to have come forward to us. We're not going to have the person who owns the card room downtown Santa Cruz. This is significant.
Right. So I would also like to hear from the other, because I would like for the Library Advisory Committee to make a recommendation to the council tonight as well, so that they understand where we're coming from.
I don't think that we should close the door on accepting a significant donation that might be tied to a name. I do think that we want, as people have said, we want it to be the right name. I would prefer it not to be a corporation. But I think it would be short-sighted of us to say at this moment that we are going to not even have that opportunity to accept a significant donation to the library for an endowment to cover the cost, to keep it functioning and delivering services for a long time to come. I don't think that's a wise statement to say at this juncture. We wouldn't even be open to that. I like some of the rooms. I mean, I think a lot of those rooms would be great for namings. And I like the sort of that donor wall, or some sort of more Capitola-esque version of a donor wall, to Gail's point of making it accessible to people who could donate a smaller amount. I would like that. But I agree, I don't think that we want every piece of furniture. I think that sort of gets a little tacky, a little too much. I think we can find sort of nice tiers of donations without going to every little nook and cranny.
The reason why I was really shying away from naming the building is that I think we've never done anything like this before, and I think could be awkward, could be embarrassing, and we'd have to have a real clear process for what we're doing. And I think that's why it's just cleaner just to say no. Let's fundraise for everything else except the building, and we don't have to worry about it. because I don't know who's going to say the no. I don't know how they're going to say it, and,
Well, I know we're going to
you
have
know,
our
if you have
hands-
competing applications, you know, how do you choose and how do you?
I don't know if we're going to have that.
Competing $5 million donations, we should be that lucky.
I'd love to cross that bridge.
I think as a committee, we're going to have our hands full with the rooms, you know, and I would say that if somebody drops in our lap having to do with the building, that's pretty much how that's going to happen, because there's not a huge committee here, folks, and we're doing our best, but there's going to be and the timeline keeps getting moved up. So all of a sudden, wait a minute, we've got 3 less months to raise the money. Oh, wait a minute, this month we've got 3 less months to raise the money. So we're working on it.
You can blame David Tanza for that, by the way. But Gail, I don't see that, and I'm on the fundraising committee, I don't see any of us going out and beating the bushes for building naming rights. That's not going to be our real press and our real work product. So I would like to hear the library committee tell us, you shouldn't, under any circumstances, name the building after a corporation. I think that's a solid place to stand. And
I'll tell you that.
okay,
I'll tell you that.
See, it doesn't take much to bring Tony out of the way.
Yeah, I think you can pretty much guarantee that we all feel that way. Yeah.
So, I was speaking a little earlier about the foundation idea, which I hadn't thought about before, and so I like that. So if there's a foundation that's clearly committed to community values, that's clearly committed to things that we can identify with in Capitola, and they actually offer something to us that has a longer-term value. So I'm not thinking in terms of like $3 million right now, but over a period of 10 or 15 years, they keep putting money into the library as programs.
Doc, that's really problematic, because the people who are going to be administering this are the large friends group. And the large friends group is not going to want to take on billing and worrying about collecting on those over a long period of time. There will be, I believe there will be some larger contributions that are done over maybe a 2-year period of time, but I have a feeling that that's about all we can hope for as far as administrating those giving patterns.
Okay, so we won't have that control.
No.
The Capitola Friends of the Library.
No, the Friends are under an umbrella group of a larger Friends group from the whole of Santa Cruz. So they are our fiscal and our shepherd in a way. So all the monies are going to go through them and be dispersed by them.
It can't be designated to Capitola?
Oh, it will be. Yeah.
Okay, so so my point is that having a larger entity do it, I wouldn't have not a corporation, but an entity that's clearly defined by its intent to support community activities like a library or development of kids in terms of educational issues and branching out to the world, or a whole variety of things that we could identify with. See, I could cross the line when it comes to something like that. In addition, the idea that they're putting money into this over time, so that this is not a one-time thing. You're committed to this approach to helping the community, and so over a period of time, you put some money into that to help realize that approach. That's just my input.
So it looks like there's some people on the library committee that are interested in naming the building and others that aren't. So do you want to summarize that?
Yeah, I would say if somebody wants to make a motion about how our committee feels about naming the building, you could include corporate and non-corporate. But I think we're pretty much, corporate's off the table. I don't think the motion would have to include that. But I think a foundation is like an individual, and so I think that's very similar. As far as individual, where do we stand? We've got, excuse me.
One yes.
One yes.
What do you tell me? Yes or no?
Steve's a no, I'm a no. And I
3
think
no's.
Barbara in our meeting for fundraising was also a no. So a majority of our committee feels no, and the majority of the fundraising committee felt no. And if that's any indication of what our community feels, maybe we want to hear from people in the community.
That is a great idea. We're not on the regular city council item right now. We're just finishing the special meeting with the library advisory committee. So if anyone would like to make a comment to us now about the library, please come up and do that right here at the podium. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Bunny Tavares. I'm a resident here, and I'm also serving on the fundraising committee for the library with the Friends Committee. And I've been a nonprofit person and a fundraiser for about 35 or 40 years, and I've seen this kind of situation many times, and rarely have I ever seen a building being named in a community of this size. I think that it opens up a huge can of worms that is better left aside. I really feel, and I'm not sure, Jacques, what you were speaking of when you were talking about foundation, the clarification between a foundation and an endowment. I think if somebody comes forward with $5 million and wants to make a contribution, that could go into an endowment that would then funnel through the main Friends library system, but it would be managed by an outside entity like the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County, because those funds need to be dispersed over a period of time for a variety of things. And that way, if someone wants to put that kind of money into the project, they would have their name on the endowment, so they'd get that kind of recognition. I don't see any purpose in setting up a separate foundation for it. That's just my opinion.
Endowment's a good way to put it. Thank you.
And I also agree with the library committee members that you want to limit the amount of naming that you do, because the more finite you get, the more it detracts from the value of what people have intended with their gifts. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for her, for Bunny? Susan?
Sorry, I'd like to put my 2 cents in. I think that you're all right to decide whether you want to name a building or not, and so I don't want to touch that one. I just want to point out, though, that I think local companies might be very interested in naming rooms. Corporate foundations may be very interested in naming rooms. Private foundations may be very interested in naming rooms, and private individuals. So there's the naming of the building aside, but I think you should just then look for a little direction about that second layer and whether those 4 types of entities. Yeah. Most major corporations do have a foundation. They're 501c3s, and their role is giving. So that's another difficulty in all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so that's where I was asking for the motion or a move toward a motion on the rooms and whether they are just individuals or individuals and corporations.
I do. I would entertain a motion.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we limit the naming rights in the library to the rooms and to the outdoors, unless Susan has some recommendation for more than what's listed up there.
I think even our committee may have a little bit more than what's listed up there, but I think we have about 16.
Yeah, it didn't add up for me. And that these naming rights be limited just to those and not to everything. Is that the motion you were thinking about?
And having to do with individual corporations.
Individuals certainly, I think, should be part of that, so that would be part of my motion. Depending on the foundation, that may or may not be a corporation, I could live with that in my motion.
Yeah.
Can I just point of clarification?
Is there a second before we
wait before you get discussion.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Please come up.
Some of our
Come to the microphone. Thank you.
Some of our most successful naming rights were also with civic organizations, the Rotary Reading Room, the Lion's Den. So I would encourage you at this point at the rooms to look at a naming policy that is open to a lot of organizations in your community. If you're not talking about the building itself, I think you may want to be open to a broader group of people helping us with this.
Yeah, and I think we are. I think that encompasses that. I mean, certainly a service organization is not going to be turned away.
Any other discussion on the motion? Questions, please come up.
Sometimes this comes in as a design issue, and there are different ways of recognizing the larger room donations without having a very large sign. You can sometimes have a smaller sign, it's a little more discreet, so it's not so much in your face, as if you do want to allow something like a corporation to do it, it still doesn't have to have a big sign over the door that says it's the Chevron, children's room. It could be more subtle.
Thank you.
We've got the visual.
That's a hard one to get out of your brain.
Really?
All right, so what I heard in the motion was that we would consider corporate and individual for everything other than the building at this point. And
I would add to that Susan's suggestion of community organizations.
yes, absolutely. And that's, okay, all right. And so a call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or anything else we would like to discuss? Thank you so much, library
you.
members.
Thank
We
you.
are adjourned, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this stuff. Yeah. This is great. This is great.